I liked growing up in a small town.
Excellent. So you can see at this point, Maureen's head is just spinning on how she's going to answer this. We're all excited to see. Maureen, I welcome you to the lectern here.
I love TV shows where people are put on the spot and have to answer right away. There's lots of shows like this, but some of my favorite are Saturday Night Live. Although it's scripted, the scripts for their performances are often changed minutes before they go on stage. So you have to be a really well-honed improv actor to be able to be on that show. So I love it because I love when they crack each other up, etc. It's one of my family's favorites. Another category of TV shows I like are game shows. Now, game shows are interesting because it's regular people like us, and you're asked a question, or you have to respond to something, and people come up with really funny things. If you go to YouTube, you will see all kinds of bloopers and craziest moments and awkward moments. As an example, Steve Harvey is the host of Family Feud, and he asked a question, what is the last thing a burglar would like to see when they break into a house? So the guy hits the button, and I expect things like someone holding a gun or a dog, something like that. He says, "Grandma naked." So for me, I love those moments. But one of my favorite TV shows is Whose Line Is It Anyway? Anybody seen it? Just a couple of you. Those of you who have not, please report it because you will love it. This is true improv at its best. So there are 4 improv actors, and they are given situations by the host, or they'll ask people questions in the audience, and people are chosen. They have to come up front and respond to that. One of my favorite segments is song stylings. And what this is, so they again give the subject, or they bring somebody from the audience to give you a style of music that you need to do your improv with, and then you have to not only come up with something, but you have to sing a song to this person. Wayne Brady is the best at it. He's also the host of Let's Make a Deal, if you know who he is, but he is by far the best. That's one of my favorite segments. So today is my turn to pretend like I'm on Whose Line It Is Anyway, and talk to you a little bit about growing up in a small town. I grew up in a town called Scottsbluff, Nebraska. It's on the western side of the state, about 30 miles from the Wyoming border. And growing up in a small town had its benefits, but you notice I don't live in a small town any longer. So growing up, it was really, when I think back on it, it was really something that has affected me to this day. Where we grew up does affect us, but there are a few things that I would like to highlight. One is my entire extended family was there. So I had both sets of grandparents, I had a great-grandmother, and all my cousins. So there was just this big sense of family, and it was a big family. In the summers, I would ride my bike, and we lived kind of on the edge of town. And when I'd ride in, and I'd go hang out at my great-grandmother's house, and I loved her house. If I think about it, it was probably the size of this room. It was the smallest house ever, but it was always filled with people. And my great-grandmother lived till her middle 90s. And just always, she was very active up until the moment she passed away, just very, very active. And I loved hanging out with her because there was always people there. She had 5 children, and each day at least one or several of them would come over, and in this tiny little living room there was enough for 5 if you squeezed them in, and I was the kid, so I got to sit on the floor. And I just loved hearing stories. So they would tell stories about each other, they would talk about what's going on in town, and at the time I didn't realize that they would gossip about people. So I'm sure there's some salaciousness in there I didn't realize as a child. But she'd always send me home with something because she was canning and making jelly and all this stuff, and always send me home with something to take home to the family. So very fond memories of my great-grandmother. We also had cousins that had a dairy farm. Now, as a kid who lived in town, this was very cool to go to the farm and see what my cousins had to do. Now, we didn't have to do the hard work. So if you're a kid on a dairy farm, you have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, milk the cows, do whatever animals, because they had pigs and geese and chickens and, you know, everything. So, and then after school, same thing. So you have to work hard if you're a kid on a farm. But we got to come on weekends, and so we would help with the cattle. So what happens is there's the milking barn, and you line the cattle up, and they come in their stalls, so about 10 stalls. So someone is there to herd the cattle in each stall, someone's in the stall to put the machine to milk the cows, and then the cows come out, and then they go back out to the pasture to eat. So the job that we were assigned, which was a very important job, is after they come out of the stall to make sure they go out into the pasture. Well, they had nowhere else to go, but we thought we were being really, really important. We just thought that was the greatest thing ever. And one thing I remember about that is milk is stored in big aluminum, like if you see gas trucks, they're like that, but it was smaller. So they had this milk, and there was a faucet, and they would just get their milk out of the faucet. So they would pour a couple pitchers, had 6 kids, so 4 or 5 pitchers, and they always put it out on the counter. And the cream would rise to the top, and they'd take the cream off, and then they would drink it. But they never refrigerated their milk. And I thought, oh, but it's so fresh you didn't need to, but that's whole fat milk. Can you imagine the fat in there? But they always had milk on the counter, and that's something that impacted me. And then lastly, I got to hang out with my grandfather for one summer on his farm. We lived in Nebraska, which is not, it used to be the Great American Desert, so there's not a lot of water, so you have to buy water to irrigate your crops. And my grandfather's job was to allot this water, so there's big irrigation ditches that go in and out of farms, and there's a gate that you raise and lower on how much water the farmer would buy. So we did that, and I loved just hanging out with them the whole summer. I didn't have any of my sisters there. I was, so I was by myself. But the coolest thing, this is my last story, but the coolest thing is when you're riding in the country, you know how you wave to people? You go like this. How cool is that? And if you want to talk to somebody, you stop in the middle of the road, and you're in your trucks, and you talk to them. You're never disturbed. I mean, it's not like there's other people coming. You have your conversation. So those are some of the great things about growing up in a small town. So I am not a professional extemporaneous speaker yet, but I am one step closer after my speech today. So I'm going to sing you a Toastmasters reggae song. Get up, stand up. Impromptu is it. Get up, stand up. Come give it a try today. Thank you.